Jungkook discovers a shocking secret on Taehyung's phone when Jimin is confronted. The truth explodes, shattering their friendship and trust forever. "You weren't supposed to see that." Taehyung's voice cracked as Jungkook's trembling hands tightened around the phone. The screen burned like fire in Jungkook's palm, the message glaring up at him with cruel clarity. A single line, 17 words, but it shattered the fragile structure of his trust like a mirror dropped from the heavens. He doesn't remember what we did, but if he finds out, everything ends, especially for him. The message was from Jimin. Rain slammed against the dorm windows, streaking down like veins of ice. The room shrouded in pale gray and muted thunder. Jungkook's pulse roared in his ears, louder than the storm outside. Every breath he took felt too loud, like it could break the silence into jagged, screaming pieces. "What is this?" he asked, voice raw, almost whispering, as if saying it too loud would summon something darker. Taehyung didn't answer. His mouth opened, closed, eyes darted toward the door. His fingers twitched like they were aching to grab the phone back, to erase the words, to pull them all back in time. But it was too late. The smell of ozone and damp earth seeped in through the half-open window. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn blared. Life moved on outside, but inside, time had stalled, frozen by betrayal. Thick with a tension that crackled in the air like lightning about to strike, Jungkook took a step back, his muscles taut with disbelief. "You knew," he whispered. "All this time you both knew?" Taehyung flinched as if hit. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. He didn't mean to hurt you, Jungkook. You thought I'd never find out." Silence. Jungkook's mind splintered with memories he couldn't quite place. Faces blurred at the edges. A night he couldn't fully remember, like a dream submerged underwater. He'd chalked it up to stress, to exhaustion, to everything but a reason to doubt the people closest to him. But now the cracks were showing. Taehyung ran a hand through his rain-damp hair, shoulders hunched as if trying to make himself smaller. "If you go to him now, it'll destroy everything. Just let me explain." "No." The phone slipped from Jungkook's fingers and hit the wooden floor with a dull thud. The message still glowed. The text, like poison, seared into his eyes. "I'm going to Jimin." He turned before Taehyung could stop him. He didn't wait for answers. He didn't care that it was nearly midnight, that the rain was punishing and cold. The hallway outside was dark, the flickering emergency lights painting everything in sickly green hues. His bare feet were silent on the floor as he moved, each step a drumbeat of fury and confusion. The walk to Jimin's dorm felt like marching through a dream. Every door he passed held memories. Laughter, music, secrets shared over ramen at 3 a.m. What else had they hidden from him? He didn't knock. The door was unlocked. Inside, Jimin sat on his bed, shirt half unbuttoned, staring at a photo in his hand. His expression was blank, hollow. He didn't seem surprised to see Jungkook, almost like he'd been expecting him. Jungkook stood in the doorway, dripping rain and accusation. "Tell me the truth, right now." Jimin looked up. His eyes were tired, rimmed red, but clear, honest. Or maybe that was another lie too. "You remember something, don't you?" Jungkook pressed. "You said I wouldn't, but something's coming back. What did you do to me?" Jimin stood slowly, placing the photo down with reverent care. His lips parted, trembled, but he said nothing at first. Just looked at Jungkook like he was something sacred and broken. "I never wanted this," he said finally, "but yes, there's something you need to know." Outside, the thunder cracked like a whip, and inside, the walls began to fall. "You remember more than you're saying," Jungkook said, each word edged with a dangerous calm. "I can see it." Jimin didn't deny it. His silence wrapped around the room like smoke, choking, suffocating. The overhead light buzzed faintly, flickering in and out as if it too was afraid of what was about to be said. "I didn't want you to ever remember," Jimin whispered, barely audible, but every syllable cut through the tension like a blade. "Because if you do, it won't just destroy you, it'll destroy me too." Jungkook stepped forward, soaked and shivering, rainwater dripping from his hair, clothes clinging to his frame like a second skin. But his voice was steel. "Then I guess we both burn." Jimin's composure cracked. "You think you want the truth, but you don't. Not this one. Try me." A beat, then another, and Jimin folded, collapsing onto the edge of his bed like the weight of the world had finally crushed him. It was 6 months ago, he began, staring at the floor. After that party at Namjoon's. You were drunk, no, past drunk. You could barely walk. You were spiraling after the whole argument with your brother and I should have taken you home. I should have put you to bed. What did you do? Jungkook demanded, his voice rising like a storm about to break. Jimin looked up, eyes shining with something that was not quite tears but far too raw to be anything else. I didn't do anything to you, but I let something happen. Jungkook's fists clenched. Let what happen, Jimin? Taehyung appeared in the doorway, pale, breathless, his clothes as soaked as Jungkook's. Stop, he warned. Jimin, don't. He's not ready. He deserves to know, Jimin snapped, finally standing. You're the one who told me we should hide it. Because you begged me to, Taehyung shot back. You said if he found out, he'd never look at you the same way again. Silence fell, again, heavier than before. A moment too long, too deep. Jungkook turned to Jimin. What does that mean? Jimin inhaled shakily. There was a video, Jungkook, from that night. Someone recorded us when you were barely conscious, and I panicked. I deleted it, but not before Taehyung saw it. Jungkook felt his blood turn to ice. What was on that video? Jimin hesitated. You kissed me, and then more. You kept saying things about the fight with your brother, about something you remembered from when you were younger. Something dark, something none of us were prepared to hear. Jungkook shook his head slowly. No, that's not, I don't remember any of that. You were dissociating, Jimin said. It was like watching someone fall into a pit they didn't even know was there. You told me something, a secret so big, it scared me. I thought if you remembered it, it would break you. So I told Taehyung, and we agreed to erase everything. To protect you. Jungkook stared at them both. You erased a part of me. Without my consent, you played God with my memories. You weren't okay, Taehyung said desperately. You were spiraling for weeks after that night. You had nightmares. You stopped eating. We didn't know what else to do. I would have come back, Jungkook said, voice cracking. If you'd told me the truth, I would have found my way. But you kept me in the dark. It was never about control, Jimin said. It was about fear, what you remembered. It wasn't just about you. It involved someone else, someone powerful, someone who's still watching you. What do you mean? Jungkook asked, heart pounding in his chest like a war drum. Who? Neither of them spoke. Jungkook stepped back, horrified. You're still protecting him, even now. Taehyung looked away, and then Jimin, with trembling lips, said, Your brother. The room spun, the walls bent, the breath was ripped from Jungkook's lungs. No, he whispered. That's not possible. He raised me. He saved me. Sometimes monsters wear the faces we trust most, Jimin said softly, and this time the tears came, sliding down his cheeks with quiet agony. You told me what he did to you. You told me everything. But when you woke up the next day, it was like it had all been erased. So we made it official. We buried it. Jungkook fell to his knees. The sound of the rain was a distant roar now, like he was underwater, drowning in the echoes of a memory just out of reach. I need to see the video, he croaked. It's gone, Jimin said. I wiped every backup. I was scared of what people would do to you if it got out. You had no right, Jungkook growled, his voice low and lethal. You had no right to choose for me. You're right, Taehyung said, finally meeting his gaze. We were wrong, but we weren't ready to lose you. I already was lost. There was a beat of silence. Then the door burst open behind them. Yoongi stood there, soaked and wild-eyed, holding a flash drive in his hand. His face was pale as snow. I found something, he said, and you need to see it. Jungkook stared at the flash drive like it was a ticking bomb. What is it? Jimin asked, suddenly alert. Yoongi stepped in, closing the door behind him. It's from the security feed in Namjoon's garage. Someone backed up the video to the house server. It's encrypted, but I cracked it. Why would you even be looking? Taehyung asked, eyes narrowing. Yoongi's gaze locked with Jungkook's. Because he came to me last week. He said he was having flashes of screaming, hands, pain, and I believed him. I've seen that kind of trauma before. Jungkook rose to his feet, slowly, eyes not leaving the drive. I want to see it, he said. No, Jimin said immediately. Don't. Please. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. You'll never be the same. I'm already not the same, Jungkook said quietly. Let me have my truth. They stared at each other for a long time. Jimin finally broke. Okay. They hooked the drive into Yoongi's laptop. The screen flickered. A password prompt appeared, and Yoongi typed quickly. The file opened. The video was grainy, black and white, timestamped at 3:12 a.m. Jungkook watched as his drunk, swaying figure stumbled into the frame. Jimin followed, arms steadying him. Taehyung was nowhere in sight. Jungkook's breath caught as he watched himself slump against the car hood, laughing bitterly, slurring something unintelligible. Jimin knelt in front of him, trying to get him to calm down. Then Jungkook's demeanor shifted. His face went slack, eyes distant. He began muttering something. At first, it was garbled. And then, he told me it was normal, that it was love, that I was lucky. I was only 8. Silence. He said no one else would understand, that it had to be our secret, that if I told, I'd be alone forever. Jimin on the screen looked like he was about to cry. He reached for Jungkook's hands. Jungkook flinched. It hurt, and I hated him. But I didn't stop him, because I loved him. And that's what love meant, right? To hurt, to stay. The real Jungkook turned away from the screen, body racked with invisible shivers. Taehyung reached for him instinctively, but Jungkook jerked back like the touch burned him. I remember now, he whispered. All of it. The laptop screen continued playing, the moment unraveling, like a ghost unburied. But Jungkook wasn't watching anymore. He was standing in the center of the room, 1,000 memories colliding in his mind like a violent, impossible storm. His chest rose and fell rapidly, breath stolen by grief and rage and betrayal. Jimin walked toward him.
I didn't know what to do. I thought if I kept it quiet, you could move on.
You don't move on from this, Jungkook said, voice cracked and shaking. You survive it, and I deserve to survive it with the truth. He pushed past them all, out into the rain, into the dark, into a night that no longer felt like night, but the beginning of a reckoning. Behind him, no one followed. For the first time in years, Jungkook was alone. But for the first time ever, he was awake. The rain hadn't stopped. It roared over Seoul like a second heartbeat, as if the sky itself couldn't bear the weight of what had been revealed. Jungkook walked with no sense of direction, no destination, no plan. The streets blurred around him, soaked in neon reflections and distorted by his swollen, reddened eyes. His shoes squelched with every step. His hands were trembling. He didn't care. His skin felt wrong, like it wasn't his. His memories now belonged to a different boy, one he could barely recognize. One whose smile had been stolen. One who had been groomed to stay silent. He couldn't unhear his own voice from the video, warped by alcohol and trauma, revealing the wound he had buried so deep it had rotted. His brother, the only person he had trusted without question. The only one who had held him after their parents' funeral, who had fed him, bathed him, whispered bedtime stories to him when he couldn't sleep. The monster had worn love like a mask. Jungkook had loved his captor. A sound sliced through the wet silence, a horn, sharp and sudden. He barely had time to register the blinding lights before hands yanked him back onto the sidewalk. Tires screeched. A cab skidded past, the driver screaming obscenities through a half-open window. Jungkook crumpled to the concrete, gasping, shaking, uncontrollably. Jesus Christ, Jungkook. Namjoon's voice cracked like a whip, full of panic. You're gonna get yourself killed. Jungkook didn't respond. He looked up at Namjoon like he was a ghost. Namjoon's hoodie clung to his broad frame, soaked, face lined with worry. He knelt beside Jungkook, checking his limbs for injury. Jungkook slapped his hands away. You knew, he spat. Didn't you? You knew. Namjoon froze. Say it, Jungkook growled. Look me in the eye and say you didn't know. Namjoon's jaw tightened. His voice came out low, controlled the way one might speak to a ticking bomb. I didn't know everything. Bullshit. I suspected, Namjoon confessed, his voice breaking. Years ago, there were signs, but you never said anything. And when I asked, you got defensive. I thought, maybe I was overthinking. I told myself, if something had happened, you'd come to me. I was a child, Jungkook screamed. I didn't even know it was wrong. I thought it was love. The words shattered in the air like glass. Namjoon's face twisted in guilt. I'm sorry. I failed you. Jungkook rose to his feet. unsteady, a mix of rain and tears cascading down his cheeks. "You didn't just fail me. You left me with him." "Don't do that," Namjoon pleaded. "Don't twist it like that. You know I never—" "No." Jungkook shoved him. "You don't get to ask me for forgiveness right now. You don't get to make this about your guilt." Namjoon took the shove. He didn't retaliate. His eyes stayed soft, wounded. "Then what do you want?" Jungkook stared at him, breath ragged. "I want to remember everything. All of it. I want to stop pretending I'm okay. I want to confront that bastard, and I want you to help me." The request hit Namjoon like a sledgehammer. He nodded, slowly. "All right, then we start now." The apartment was silent when they arrived. No lights, no sound. Jungkook stood in front of the door, fist hovering near the handle, chest heaving. His brother's apartment. His brother's world. The place he once ran to when he was scared of monsters under the bed, never realizing the real monster was the one tucking him in. Namjoon placed a steadying hand on Jungkook's shoulder. "You don't have to go in alone." Jungkook shook his head. "I need to see his face." He entered. The door creaked open like it recognized him. The air was stale, clean, deceptively normal. A candle had burned down to the wick on the kitchen counter. The same photos still lined the walls, childhood trips, school ceremonies, birthdays. A perfectly curated lie. "Jungkook?" A voice called from the hallway. It was calm, familiar, warm, and suddenly, he was 8 again. He was hiding behind a couch. His knees scraped from a fall. His brother's voice was calling him not in anger, but with concern. It was a memory, a weapon. His brother appeared in the doorway, towels slung around his neck. He froze. "Kookie?" Jungkook stared at him. "Don't call me that." His brother blinked. "What's going on?" "You're drenched. You raped me." The words were not shouted. They were said with the calm certainty of someone reclaiming oxygen after years of drowning, and they hit like a thunderclap. Silence. His brother's expression didn't change at first, but the air changed. The mask cracked. "That's not true," he said quickly. "You were confused. You were—" "Don't," Jungkook snapped. "Don't you dare use that word." Namjoon stepped forward. "We have proof. Video. Testimony." Jungkook remembered. "You can't talk your way out of this." His brother's expression flickered not to fear, but calculation. "You're not thinking clearly," he said, voice soft, coaxing. "Whatever lies they told you." "You told me love meant keeping secrets," Jungkook said. "You made me believe pain was devotion. You built an entire prison out of affection, and I lived in it." His brother finally lost control. "You wanted it," he hissed. "You needed me. You begged me not to leave you after Mom and Dad died. You clung to me like a leech. What was I supposed to do? Not rape a child," Namjoon roared. Jungkook didn't flinch. He stepped closer. "You don't get to gaslight me anymore. I'm not that kid, and you're not my savior. You're the reason I forgot how to look in the mirror without shame." His brother's mouth opened. No sound came out. For the first time, he looked small. Jungkook took something from his pocket. A recorder. "I want you to say it," he said. "Say what you did." His brother's face twisted. "You think this is going to fix you?" "No, but it'll expose you." A beat, then a low chuckle. "You're just like me," he said. "You think you're different, but you're not. You'll end up twisted, broken, alone." Jungkook's eyes were steady. "Maybe, but I won't be a predator." He walked out. Namjoon followed. The door slammed behind them. They didn't speak until they reached the car. Jungkook got in, shaking. Namjoon sat behind the wheel, silent. "I don't feel better," Jungkook said. "I thought I would, but I just feel hollow." Namjoon looked at him, eyes full of an unspoken ache. "Healing isn't a moment. It's a war." They drove in silence. The city blurred past. When they returned to the dorm, Jimin was waiting outside, arms folded, eyes bloodshot from crying. Taehyung was beside him, silent. Jungkook approached. No words, just tension, so thick it could be sliced. "I saw him," Jungkook said. "He tried to manipulate me. Again. But I recorded everything." Jimin blinked. "What are you going to do with it?" "I don't know," Jungkook said honestly. "But I'm done protecting him." Taehyung stepped forward. "We want to help."
if you'll let us.
Jungkook nodded, but his expression was guarded. Jimin took a step closer. I didn't handle it right. I should have trusted you. I know, Jungkook said. Jimin hesitated. Do you hate me? Jungkook shook his head. I don't, but I can't forgive you yet. Jimin nodded, eyes wet. I'll wait, however long it takes. Inside the dorm, Yoongi was waiting with a laptop open. I traced the file back up. The person who saved the footage wasn't random. It was someone from your brother's work. Someone with access to private servers. Jungkook frowned. Why? Yoongi turned the screen toward them. Because he wasn't acting alone. The image showed another man, older, well-dressed, laughing beside Jungkook's brother in a grainy photo from a conference. Yoongi's voice was cold. He's a politician, a big one, and if your brother was covering for him, this goes deeper than any of us thought. Jungkook stared at the screen. The truth had been unearthed, but the rot went further than he ever imagined. He wasn't just a victim of a single man. He was a loose thread in a web of power, lies, and corruption. And now they had to decide, pull the thread and risk everything, or let it tighten and strangle what little hope remained. The screen glowed like a wound in the dark. Jungkook stared at the politician's face. He didn't recognize him, not consciously, but something deep within him recoiled. That man's face held the kind of smile that made your stomach twist, even if you didn't know why. Yoongi sat beside him, expression cold and clinical, fingers still resting on the trackpad of his laptop, as though bracing for the next blow. Who is he? Jungkook asked, voice dry as sand. Yoongi glanced at him. Min Gwan, Cabinet Secretary for Youth Welfare. That's not even the worst part. This man has been pushing for more control over child protection services. More surveillance, more funding. On the surface, he looks like a champion for kids. Behind the curtain, he's been donating massive amounts of money to obscure charities. Most of them trace back to your brother's name. Jesus Christ, Namjoon muttered. It's a ring. Yoongi nodded slowly. Looks like it. Jungkook's throat closed. He looked at the screen again. The image had been taken 7 years ago. His brother stood beside the politician, shoulder to shoulder, both men raising glasses of champagne in a room full of smiles and shadows. He wasn't just abusing me, Jungkook said. He was grooming me to be passed along. The room went still. Jimin stepped forward, voice quiet but firm. That's why he never panicked about the footage, because he knew someone bigger was protecting him. Taehyung's hand curled into a fist. We have to go public. Now. Yoongi was already typing. If we do that, the footage will disappear from every server within an hour. These people have reach. We need to move smarter. We release it to the press, Jimin argued. Somebody like Jin, he's a journalist, and he hates corruption. He'd never let this die. Yoongi shook his head. Not yet. If we play the video too early, they'll deny everything, say it's AI generated or fake. We don't have enough yet. We need money trails. We need physical evidence. We need people who were there. Jungkook spoke up, cutting through the noise. What about me? I'm evidence. My story. The recording I have of him admitting it. The trauma. Isn't that enough? Yoongi looked at him gently, but firmly. It's not about being enough. It's about being indisputable. You're the victim. You don't owe anyone your pain. But the system won't move unless we crack it open from multiple sides. Right now, you're a matchstick. We need the gasoline. Silence stretched. Jungkook felt himself spinning, like a thread unraveling from the inside. The heat in the room, the lights, the pressure, it was all turning to static. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window, where the early morning light was beginning to seep through gray clouds. Seoul was waking up, unaware that beneath its polished skyline, something grotesque had been breathing for years. I want to meet him, Jungkook said without turning around. Everyone went still. Who? Namjoon asked warily. The politician, Min Gwan. Jungkook's voice was resolute.
Face to face.
Absolutely not, Jimin snapped. That man is dangerous. He has power. If he knows you're regaining memory, he could do anything. That's why I want to see him, Jungkook said. I want to look him in the eyes and make him nervous. I want to see if he knows who I am. Because if he recognizes me, if there's even a flicker of guilt, we'll know. You're not bait, Taehyung said. You don't need to do this. Yes, Jungkook said, turning to face them. I do. The building was cold and sterile, all steel and tinted glass. The waiting room was too clean, too silent. Jungkook sat across from a bored secretary tapping away at a tablet, the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead making his skin crawl. His hoodie was pulled up, his eyes covered by a cap, but the anxiety radiating off him was unmistakable. Yoongi sat beside him, disguised as an aide with a lapel pin and a hidden mic, feeding audio back to Jimin and Taehyung, who were stationed in a van outside with monitors and comms. Namjoon had wanted to come too, but Jungkook told him no. "I need someone I trust on the outside," he had said, "in case something goes wrong." "Mr. Min will see you now," the secretary said flatly. Yoongi squeezed Jungkook's shoulder once. "You don't have to speak. Just observe." They walked down a hallway that reeked of money. The office was huge floor-to-ceiling windows, leather couches, a mahogany desk so polished you could see your reflection. Min Gwan stood when they entered. And in that moment, Jungkook knew. That smile, that same carefully measured warmth, that same calculating gaze, that face. The man didn't blink. He tilted his head, assessing Jungkook with the mild curiosity of a businessman evaluating a portfolio. "You're Jungkook, yes?" he said. "I've heard of you. Music, isn't it?" Yoongi nodded. "He's considering a partnership with your youth foundation. We wanted to ask some questions." "Of course." Min Gwan gestured to the chairs. "Sit, please." Jungkook didn't move. He stared at the man, unblinking. "You don't remember me, do you?" Jungkook said softly. The air shifted. Min Gwan blinked a flicker. Just one, but it was enough. Enough for Jungkook to see the truth. "Should I?" The man replied, smiling. "I was 12, Jungkook said. "You visited my brother, late at night. I was in the hallway. You called me into the room." Min Gwan's smile faltered. "Careful what you say, son," he said, voice colder now. "I was wearing a blue hoodie," Jungkook continued. "You said I had pretty eyes. You said I looked like my mother. You gave me a caramel candy and told me to sit on the bed." Yoongi subtly pressed a button on his watch. The mic was capturing everything. Min Gwan leaned back in his chair, face hard. "You're confused." "I'm not." The older man narrowed his eyes. "You have no idea what you're walking into. You think the media will care? They'll eat you alive. I'm not just a man, I'm a machine. You touch me, you touch everything. Then let it all burn," Jungkook said, dead calm. Min Gwan laughed once, bitter. "Do you know how many are involved? Judges, executives, officers. Your brother was one of the least important pieces. You take one of us down, 10 more rise. You're nothing. Just a damaged kid who sings." Yoongi stood then, jaw tight. "This conversation is over." Min Gwan rose slowly, walking toward Jungkook. "You think truth matters? You'll die before it gets heard. You'll disappear. One overdose headline and you'll be gone." Jungkook didn't flinch. "Then make it quick, because I'm done living in fear." They left. In the elevator, Jungkook finally exhaled. Yoongi looked at him, proud but worried. "That was dangerous, but it worked," Jungkook said. "He remembers me. He tried to intimidate me. That's proof." Back in the van, Taehyung was shaking. "We got all of it, every word." Jimin stared at the audio waveform. "We bring this to Jin now." The meeting with Jin was quiet but tense. He listened to the entire recording twice. When it ended, he lit a cigarette and stared out the window for a long time. "This story will ruin me," he said. "They'll blacklist my press badge. They'll come after my family." Jungkook leaned forward. "And it'll save lives." Jin nodded once. "I'll publish." 2 weeks later, the expose exploded across the country. Headlines screamed of child trafficking, abuse, corruption. Min Gwan denied everything. He cried on camera. His supporters called it a witch hunt. But the tape was irrefutable. Public outrage surged. Protests swelled. Other victims came forward. Jungkook sat in a park, watching strangers carry signs with his name on them. He didn't want the fame. He didn't want pity. He just wanted justice. Jimin joined him quietly. "People are listening," he said. "You cracked something open." Jungkook didn't respond. He stared at the sky. "I don't know who I am now." "You're free," Jimin said softly. Jungkook turned to him. "Freedom's scarier than the cage." Jimin offered a hand. "Then let's figure it out." together. Jungkook hesitated. Then he took it. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like a ghost. The applause was thunderous, deafening. But it didn't feel real. Jungkook stood behind the velvet curtain, sweat sliding down his neck, eyes unfocused as the MC shouted his name into the microphone. A charity gala. Thousands in attendance. Flashbulbs exploded beyond the curtain. News outlets lined in rows, cell phones held aloft like torches. On the surface, he was the honored guest, a brave survivor. The papers had printed whose voice had inspired a wave of justice across the country. But beneath the surface, everything still pulsed with rot. "You ready?" Jin whispered beside him, adjusting his tie. The journalist looked exhausted. The past 2 weeks had aged him. The death threats, the surveillance vans, the shadowy meetings in underground garages. They love you right now. Jungkook gave a bitter smile. "Yeah, they love me because I survived, not because I screamed." Jin winced. "You don't have to say anything if you're not up for it. I already wrote it. Still time to change your mind." Jungkook stepped forward, out of the shadow and into the spotlight. He blinked against the lights. Cameras snapped. People rose to their feet. Their claps sounded like gunfire to him. All these strangers cheering for something they didn't understand. He stepped up to the podium. The lights were too hot, the world too quiet. His hands were steady. "I've heard a lot of words lately," he began, voice calm but cutting. "Brave, heroic, strong. But the truth is, I'm just a boy who remembered." The room fell silent. Phones stopped recording. Eyes sharpened. I remembered a face, a voice, a lie. I remembered a man who was supposed to protect me, touching me like I was something to be used and discarded. I remembered being 8 years old and too ashamed to tell anyone. He let that sit, let the discomfort settle into their bones. And I remembered the people who knew, who looked the other way, who smiled at family dinners and signed funding checks and praised my brother for being a devoted guardian. A ripple moved through the crowd. Whispers, shuffling. But Jungkook wasn't finished. I was never alone. There were others. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Children who didn't have cameras watching, who didn't survive, who won't ever get to stand on a stage like this. A man in the front row shifted uneasily. Minister Cho, another high-ranking official who had backed Min Gwan's bills for over a decade. Jungkook saw his face and let his eyes lock with him. "There are still monsters in this room," someone gasped. "I'm not naming names. Not yet, because I want you all to know that even now they're watching me. They've tried to bribe, threaten, silence, but they can't unmake the truth. They can't kill memory." He paused, breathed. "And if they kill me, someone else will take my place." The room was frozen. Jungkook stepped back from the mic, nodded once, and walked away. The applause didn't come until he was almost gone. But this time, it didn't sound like gunfire. It sounded like thunder. Backstage, Jimin was pacing. When he saw Jungkook, he stopped. He started. "Too much?" Jungkook asked. "No, not enough," Jimin said, eyes fierce. "But the perfect start." Taehyung was waiting in the car. He had the engine running, his jaw tight. "They'll be coming after us now." "They already are," Jimin muttered. "We're just not pretending anymore." Jungkook slid into the back seat, exhaustion crawling into his spine. "Where's Yoongi?" "Tracking our mystery accounts," Taehyung said, pulling away from the venue. "He found another offshore trail. Leads to Macau. Shell companies and fake nonprofits. Your brother's name is on one of them." Jungkook closed his eyes. "Of course it is." They drove in silence. The city sparkled outside. Clean glass, clean streets. But Jungkook couldn't stop seeing the filth beneath the shine. Yoongi's apartment was a fortress now. Blackout curtains, locks on every door. He looked up from his monitors when they entered, eyes rimmed red from lack of sleep. "I think I found the route." He turned his screen. A diagram sprawled across it, dozens of names, organizations, bank accounts. At the center, a name Jungkook didn't recognize. Lee Do-yoon, Yoongi said. Former defense minister, retired quietly 5 years ago, but he still controls the board of multiple children's charities. Guess who sits under him on 2 of them? Min Gwan, Taehyung said grimly. Bingo. This guy's the spider. Min Gwan was just a fang. Yoongi clicked a folder. Dozens of scanned documents appeared. Meeting memos, donations, photos. One image froze them all. A girl barely 12 sitting in a lavish hotel room, eyes wide, terrified. In the background, blurred but unmistakable, Jungkook's brother. And Lee Do-yoon, that girl, Jimin whispered. Is she? Missing, Yoongi said. Reported runaway 6 years ago. Never found. Jungkook felt nausea rise in his throat. We need to find her, or what happened to her. Yoongi nodded. Already trying. But if we go after Lee, we need a war chest. We need allies. Because the deeper we dig, the closer we get to the people who control the justice system itself. Taehyung leaned forward. Then we find the rod in the police, the prosecutors, the media. We shine a light everywhere. Jungkook stood. And I talk. Everywhere. Every interview. Every stage. I'll say his name, I'll say all of their names. Yoongi looked up. That'll paint a target on your back. Jungkook looked him dead in the eye. Good. Let them try. The threats came swiftly. Anonymous texts, unmarked cars, a dead bird in their mailbox. One night, someone cut the brake line on their van. They found it before starting the engine. Another night, Jimin's apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just photos scattered across the floor. His childhood albums, his family. This is psychological warfare, Jin said grimly. They're trying to wear you down. It won't work, Jungkook replied. But it was working. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. The nightmares were worse now, not just his brother's hands, but a faceless crowd applauding while he screamed behind soundproof glass. He would wake up with bruises from thrashing, sobbing silently into his sheets. One night, he found himself on the roof of their building, wind slicing through his hair. Jimin found him there, barefoot on the ledge. Don't, Jimin said softly, not stepping closer. Please, I'm not going to jump, Jungkook said. I just wanted to feel the height. To remember I'm still above ground. Jimin sat on the cold concrete. I'm scared too, all the time, but not of them. I'm scared of losing you again. Jungkook looked at him. Why did you stay? After everything I said? Because I love you, Jimin said. Even if you never forgive me. Jungkook climbed down from the ledge and sat beside him. I want to forgive you, he said. But I still feel like I'm piecing myself together from ash. Jimin smiled sadly. Then we rebuild, brick by brick. Together, 3 weeks later, Yoongi found her, the girl in the photo, alive, working under a fake name in Busan, scarred, silent, but alive. Jungkook went to her, brought no cameras, no police, just himself. She didn't speak for an hour, just stared at the ocean. Then finally, you're the boy from the screen. Jungkook nodded. Yeah? She looked at him. Why did you come? Because I remember what it felt like to think I was the only one. She started to cry. So did A. And beneath the crash of the waves, something shifted. Not peace, but the start of something like it. The video dropped at 2:47 a.m. No warning, no lead up, just a single tweet from an anonymous account. If you thought the truth was over, watch this. Jungkook was asleep when the world ignited. Jimin was beside him, curled into a tight coil beneath the sheets, their breath shallow and synchronous. They hadn't even undressed, too tired from the hours they'd spent poring over testimonies and timelines, trying to connect every name, every charity, every face. Jungkook's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. Dozens of times in a minute. It was Yoongi who kicked the door open, eyes bloodshot, voice razor sharp. Wake up, now. Jungkook sat up instantly, heart sprinting into panic. Jimin jolted awake beside him. What happened? Yoongi tossed a tablet onto the bed. They leaked the black tape. Jungkook stared at the screen. It was grainy, shaky, night vision. A hotel room, 3 men, all with blurred faces. One of them was unmistakably his brother. Another, taller, broader, was Min Guan. The third had been unknown. Until now. Lee Do-yoon. There was a child, maybe 10, crying. Jungkook couldn't breathe. Jimin slammed the tablet shut with shaking hands. Who posted it? Anonymous, Yoongi said. But that's not the problem. The problem is, he was interrupted by the sound of a helicopter overhead. Then the scream of sirens, the sudden bang of a door being kicked in downstairs. Taehyung burst into the room from the hall. "They're here! Police!" Jungkook stared at him. "To arrest them?" Taehyung didn't answer. The interrogation room stank of steel and sweat. Jungkook sat across from a detective with a tired smile and dead eyes. His wrists were free, but the message was clear. Cooperate. Or we'll find a reason to change that. This isn't about guilt, the detective said mildly. It's about process. Due diligence. We need your cooperation to ensure national stability. Jungkook blinked. You want me to recant? We want you to be smart. Behind the mirror, Namjoon was pacing. Yoongi sat at the console with a headset, monitoring audio, tapping notes onto a legal pad. Jin stood in the corner with a grim expression and a copy of the country's constitution folded in his hand like a blade. You know they'll spin it, Jin muttered. Say he's lying, that he faked the footage for revenge. Even if it means throwing a child on camera under the bus? Namjoon asked. Yoongi didn't look up. They've done worse. Inside the room, Jungkook leaned forward. You want stability? He said. Then arrest the men in that video. The detective's smile didn't falter. We don't know if it's real. Deepfakes are very convincing these days. That's my brother on that tape. And that makes you emotional. Not reliable. Jungkook laughed once. Then explain why the girl I found in Busan recognized all three of them? We're working on locating her, the detective said smoothly. But her credibility is unclear. So is mine. Until it wasn't. The detective finally leaned back, exhaling. Look, Jungkook, you're a celebrity. You're a voice people care about. And you're young. You've got your whole life ahead of you. But if you keep pulling this thread, you're gonna find knots you weren't meant to see. And then they'll strangle you. I'm not scared of knots, Jungkook said. I'm scared of silence. The detective stood. You can leave. For now. But don't think this is over. Jungkook's voice followed him as he left. Good. I don't want it to be. Outside the station, the press had gathered like sharks. Microphones, cameras, flashbulbs. Jungkook pushed through the crowd with Taehyung and Jimin shielding him on either side, Namjoon barking at photographers to move. One reporter shoved a mic in his face. Jungkook, is the tape real? Did you stage this for attention? He stopped, turned, looked her dead in the eye. Do you think a child would cry like that for fame? She lowered the mic. More questions flew. Jungkook didn't answer another one, but the silence felt like a scream. By nightfall, the story had split the nation. Half the country demanded justice. The other half screamed conspiracy. Political commentators debated on live television. Was Jungkook a whistleblower? A puppet? A liar? Death threats flooded in by the hour. So did support. Letters. Drawings from children. Messages from survivors. Jungkook sat in the safe house Yoongi had prepared, scrolling through the messages with trembling hands. One stood out. It was from an anonymous email. You weren't supposed to survive. And now everything's unraveling. You're next. Attached was a photo. It was his childhood bedroom, taken from outside his old house. I'm not safe here, Jungkook whispered. No one is, Jimin replied quietly. Yoongi walked in, holding a burner phone. I just got a call from a source, a former police technician. He worked with Lee Do-yoon's charity a few years ago. Said he has backups, names, footage. He wants to meet. Where? Jungkook asked. Yoongi hesitated. In person. He doesn't trust tech. He said they're watching all networks. He'll only talk if he sees you face to face. It's a trap, Taehyung said. Or it's the only shot we have, Jin muttered. Jungkook stood. Tell him I'm coming. The warehouse was outside the city, abandoned, reeking of mold and gasoline. Jungkook stepped out of the van with Yoongi and Jimin at his side, flashlights cutting through the shadows. Back here, a voice rasped. They turned. A man stepped from the shadows, mid-40s, thin, nervous, carrying a hard drive in a locked case. My name's Park Il-jae, he said. I saw things in the network. Files they thought were deleted. Jungkook approached slowly. Why now? Because I saw your face, Il-jae said. And because I have a daughter. She's 10. Yoongi stepped forward. What's on the drive? Names. Schedules. Hotel receipts. Payments. Birthdays. The sound of tires. Headlights flaring. Yoongi swore. Move! Gunfire, exploded, screams, shouting. Jungkook hit the floor. Blood sprayed across the concrete as Il-jae was hit in the shoulder. Jimin dragged Jungkook behind a stack of pallets as Yoongi fired back. Two masked men fled the scene, vanishing into the dark. Taehyung appeared moments later with a second team of trusted allies, members of Jin's newsroom, a few underground activists, a rogue former investigator. Il-jae groaned. Take the drive. I encrypted it. Password is my daughter's name. Hana. Keep her safe. Jungkook took it with both hands. I swear, he said. I will. Back in the safe house, they cracked the drive. Names poured out like rot from a corpse. Judges, celebrities, CEOs, all tied to Lee Do-yoon. Jungkook stared at the list, tears in his eyes. I thought it was just me. It was never just you, Yoongi said. We leak it all, Taehyung said. No, Jin replied. We verify, one by one. We cross-reference, and then we burn them all. Jungkook nodded. No more mercy. Jimin took his hand. For the first time since this all began, Jungkook felt the rage settle into purpose. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The room was dead silent, except for the low hum of the server drives. Jungkook stared at the spreadsheet on the screen. The names cascading like a list of ghosts. Some he recognized, others he'd seen only in photos or in brief, forgettable moments on TV. But they were all here now. Unforgettable. The weight of their existence pressed against his chest like a collapsing ceiling. Yoongi clicked through folders with the steady hands of someone trying not to vomit. Behind him, Taehyung paced like a caged animal, one hand in his hair, the other clenched in a trembling fist. Jimin sat curled in the corner, silent, eyes vacant. Jin entered the room, a single piece of paper in his hand. They're already trying to spin it, he said without preamble. Somebody leaked our discovery to a news outlet we don't control. Guess what their headline says? Jungkook didn't answer. He already knew. Jin held up the page like a verdict. K-pop star. Manipulated by extremist journalists to fabricate pedophile. Conspiracy public warned against false panic. Taehyung cursed and kicked a metal chair across the room. The sound ricocheted off the walls like a gunshot. They're faster than we thought, Yoongi said. We have maybe 24 hours before they file an injunction to seize this data. Let them try, Jin said. I've already duplicated it 6 times. It's gone to 3 different countries. We're not losing the files. But that's not the problem. Jungkook looked up, jaw-locked. Then what is? Jin walked over, dropped the paper onto the keyboard in front of him. You're not the only one who was on their list. Jungkook frowned, confused.
What?
Yoongi opened a separate file, one they hadn't touched yet. It was marked in red. Reconditioned subjects. Operation Skyring. Jimin stirred in the corner. What the hell is Skyring? Yoongi clicked. Images appeared. Children. Profiles. Photos of them at different ages. Names in Korean and English. Timelines of their movements. Dozens of them. Some faces had big red X marks over them. Others were labeled Acid Potential or Failed Compliance. And one of them Jungkook's heart stopped was him. His photo at age 9, then again at 12. A chart of behavior patterns, a personality report, even a series of mock psychological evaluations. What the fuck is this? He breathed. Yoongi didn't look away from the screen. They didn't just abuse you, they designed you. Jungkook staggered back. No, they knew you were musically gifted early on, Jin said. There are notes here from your middle school years. That chance audition you thought you nailed? They already had your name. But Bang PD, he gave me a shot. They got to him too, Yoongi said. Or someone close to him. These people are everywhere. They manipulate industries, media, talent, pipelines. If you're marketable, you're manageable, especially if you've been broken early. Jimin stood up. So, everything, his entire career, it was built on them watching? Not everything, Jin said. You still earned your fans, your music, your pain, that's yours. But the door that opened for you? They made sure it opened at the exact moment you'd be too grateful to question it. Taehyung slammed his hand against the wall. Jesus Christ, this is beyond corruption. This is architecture. Jungkook's voice cracked. I didn't escape. I just walked into a prettier prison. Yoongi stood up slowly, his hand shaking. No, you're outside it now. And you're the only one loud enough to destroy it from the outside. How many of us were there? Jungkook asked. Yoongi clicked again. The screen changed. A counter. Confirmed subjects, 300 Yugoshu. 327 children, Jin said. Spanning 15 years. And that's just the confirmed ones. This is not a scandal. It's a goddamn industry. Jungkook sank to his knees, his body folding in on itself. Jimin knelt beside him, holding him, whispering, "You're not them. You're not them. You're not them." Over and over like a prayer. By morning, the country had fractured in half. Protests erupted outside major news outlets. The hashtag, #SkyringTruth, trended at #1 globally within an hour, followed closely by Protect Jungkook and Where Are the 327? But with it came the counterforce. A tsunami of coordinated smear campaigns. Bots flooded Twitter. Deepfake trended. State-sponsored news anchors laughed on air, scoffing at the idea of a secret grooming ring involving politicians and celebrities. And then, the unthinkable happened. A video leaked. But not just any video. It was of Jungkook, alone, crying, screaming. From his early therapy session after confronting his brother, the audio had been stolen, distorted, twisted. They made it look like a breakdown of a liar who'd finally cracked under guilt. Jungkook watched it on a burner phone in stunned silence. They got into the clinic, Yoongi said, pacing. That session was never online. It was never digital. It was written notes. They scanned it, Jin said darkly. They filmed him through the wall. I've seen it before. Secret surveillance. Probably had the therapist bugged. Jungkook stood slowly. So they want to make me unstable, untrustworthy. They want people to think I'm dangerous. They're not just going after your truth, Taehyung said. They're going after your sanity. Well, fuck that, Jungkook said. He walked over to the table, picked up a mic from the podcast setup Yoongi had used for a recent expose, and plugged it into his laptop. Jin's eyes widened. What are you doing? Talking. Live. Unfiltered. No producers. No PR. Just me. If they want to turn me into a villain, fine. But they're gonna hear me first. Yoongi hesitated, then nodded and hit live. The screen blinked. Jungkook's face appeared. Pale, raw, unflinching, and he began to speak. No one prepares you for being erased, he said. Not from the world, but from yourself. For most of my life, I believed my success was mine. That I made it because I worked hard, sang well, trained harder. But now I know someone else was writing the script. He didn't blink. They touched me when I was a child. They shaped me, controlled me. And when I tried to speak out, they called me confused. Then they tried to kill me. When that didn't work, they tried to kill my character. He leaned closer to the mic. But I'm not confused. I am awake. Across the world, millions tuned in. Jungkook went on. He told them everything. About his brother. About Min Gwan. About Lee Do-yoon. About the girl in Busan. About Il-jae and the black tape. About Operation Skyring. He showed the names, the files, the charts. He didn't stop for an hour and 42 minutes. When he finally signed off, his voice hoarse, the chat window was filled with a single repeated phrase, "We believe you." That night, the compound was attacked. 2 masked men with Molotov cocktails. One hit the side wall. The other missed. Jimin pulled Jungkook out of bed. Smoke. Screams. Yoongi firing a warning shot from the rooftop. The fire was put out. No one was killed. But it was a message. No more games. The next morning, a name trended that no one expected. Bang Si-hyo. He released a public statement. 1 paragraph. To anyone who was hurt under my watch, I failed you. I didn't know, but I should have. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure it never happens again. Some believed him. Others didn't. But it fractured the protection wall. Other execs came forward. Lovers flipped. Bankers talked. And then, finally, a warrant was issued. For Lee Do-yoon, not by the Korean courts, but by Interpol. He fled the country within 12 hours. But they were already tracking him. The web had been spun, but now the spider was running. And Jungkook? Jungkook wasn't running anymore. He stood in the ruins of the house they tried to burn, and he sang. He sang a new song. Not about pain, not even about justice, but about truth. And it echoed, louder than fire, louder than fear, louder than everything they tried to take. The courtroom was colder than Jungkook expected. Not the kind of cold that came from air conditioning or winter draft, but something deeper, older. A kind of chill that came from history, from the decades of silence that soaked into the walls like mildew. He stood at the center of it now, a single figure wrapped in black, not because of fashion but necessity. Grief still clung to him, and he wore it like a second skin. Rise. The judge's voice echoed, cutting through the murmuring crowd. Dozens of cameras lined the gallery, behind glass, behind rules, their lights blinking like digital eyes. This was a closed trial, technically, but nothing was ever truly closed anymore. Not when the world had already watched your nightmares bleed out online. Jungkook rose slowly. Across the courtroom, Lee Do-yoon sat with hands folded, his gray hair too perfect, his suit too clean. His face didn't twitch. Not when Jungkook entered. Not when the charges were read. He didn't even blink when the prosecution named the victims. Not even the little girl from Busan. Not even Il-jae, now dead killed in a hit-and-run 2 weeks ago that everyone knew wasn't an accident. Mr. Jeon, the prosecutor said, voice measured, formal. Please state your name for the court. He swallowed once. Jeon Jungkook. Occupation? Musician. Survivor. Murmurs rippled. The judge slammed her gavel. Silence. The prosecutor continued. Mr. Jeon, you claim that Mr. Lee orchestrated a systemic grooming and abuse network targeting minors, including yourself, over a span of nearly 2 decades. I don't claim it, Jungkook said calmly. I lived it. And you believe he operated through charitable fronts, entertainment pipelines, and government oversight? I know he did. The prosecutor paused. How? Because I was one of them. I was recruited, groomed, positioned. I thought I was lucky, but I wasn't chosen for my voice. I was selected because I was vulnerable. The defense attorney, a tall, thin man with an expression like stone, rose. Objection. That's opinion, not fact. The judge stared him down. Overruled. He's testifying to lived experience. The defense looked at Lee Do-yoon, then sat back down. Mr. Jeon, the prosecutor said, do you recognize the following footage? A screen lowered. The black tape played again. The courtroom held its breath. Some people averted their eyes. Others stared, horrified. The judge closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them, watching frame by frame. When the video ended, silence fell like snow. Jungkook's voice was hoarse. That's not just evidence. That's a grave. Were you ever in that room? He nodded. Not that night, but many others like it. Did you ever see Mr. Lee there? Jungkook's stare turned into a blade.
I saw him touch children. I saw him give instructions. I saw him watch.
The defense rose again.
Your Honor, this is hearsay.
No, Jungkook snapped. This is memory. The gavel slammed again. The defense attorney stood, his voice slick with legal polish. Mr. Jeon, you're a performer. You're trained to emote. You've made a career out of selling emotion. What assurance does this court have that what we're hearing isn't performance? Jungkook's eyes didn't flinch. Because I have no reason to lie about this. I didn't ask for this stage. I didn't want this spotlight. But I'm standing here because I have to. Because every time I close my eyes, I see the faces of the kids who didn't survive. I hear their silence. The attorney's voice dipped. Weren't you also mentally unwell for a period of time? Hospitalized? Heavily medicated? Yes, Jungkook said. Because of what was done to me. Is it possible, the attorney asked, that your memories are fractured? That your trauma has distorted fact? Jungkook stared him down. Is it possible that you're paid to make monsters look like men? The room shifted. Whispers. Gasps. The judge raised her hand but didn't scold. Outside the courthouse, protesters screamed his name. Supporters camped for hours, waving signs with quotes from his live stream. Survivors came from across the country just to stand in the same air as him. Others, critics, conspiracy theorists, political defenders, accused him of destabilizing the nation, of lying for fame, of wanting revenge. but no one could deny the evidence anymore. A week into the trial, 10 more victims came forward. Jungkook met each of them. A boy from Busan, who used to draw stars on his arms to keep from cutting. A girl who hadn't spoken in 4 years until she saw Jungkook on a live stream. A young man who nearly jumped from a rooftop until he saw the black tape and realized he wasn't alone. Every time someone testified, Lee Do-yoon stared ahead like he was watching traffic. Until the 10th victim. She walked into the courtroom with her head held high, even though her hand shook. She had burned scars down her right side. Her name was Jin. She'd escaped the ring when she was 13 and hadn't spoken to anyone since. She walked past Jungkook, paused, and squeezed his hand. Then she faced her abuser. "You remember me?" she said softly. Lee Do-yoon blinked. "You called me Petal," she said. "Told me I was lucky you picked me." He didn't answer. She reached into her pocket. The court tensed. She pulled out a worn, dirty ribbon. "This was mine," she whispered. "I wore it every night. You said it made me look beautiful." She dropped it onto the floor between them. Lee Do-yoon blinked again. But this time, his hand twitched. A crack. That was all the jury needed. That night, Jungkook walked to the rooftop of the courthouse. Jimin found him there, arms crossed, jacket wrapped tight. "You did it," Jimin said softly. Jungkook didn't answer right away. "I don't feel like I did." "Because there's more. Always more," Jungkook said. "More names, more pain, more silence." Jimin came closer. "You woke up an entire generation." "I just told the truth. That's all we ever needed." Jungkook turned to face him. "Do you forgive me?" Jimin blinked. "For what?" "For breaking. For pushing you away. For needing space. For not being ready when you were." Jimin stepped close. "You never needed to be ready. You just needed to be here." Jungkook's voice cracked. "I'm tired, Jimin. I know." Jimin held him. Not as a friend, not as a savior, but as something new, something stronger than the pain, something earned. 2 days later, the verdict came. Guilty. All counts. Life sentence. But it wasn't just one man. 30 more were arrested that week. 50 more investigations opened. The entire nation convulsed. And from it, something fragile and vital began to grow. Not justice, but accountability. Jungkook didn't return to the stage. Not yet. But he returned to music, privately. He wrote a song with no beat. Just his voice. One take. No edits. It was called "They Didn't Win." When it dropped, no one promoted it. No labels. No press. And still, it reached 80 million in a week. Because people knew. They heard the truth between the notes. And they didn't look away. The morning after the verdict, Seoul felt quieter. As if the city was holding its breath, not in relief, but in anticipation of the inevitable backlash. Jungkook sat alone in Yoongi's apartment. His hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. The verdict had come and gone. But something inside him refused to settle. His name was everywhere on headlines, in chants, painted onto concrete walls in protest murals, but inside, he felt like a ghost, watching the world move around him. Yoongi entered without knocking, holding a folder in his hand. His expression was tight. "We have a problem." Jungkook didn't move. Yoongi dropped the folder on the table. Photos slid out security footage, news clippings, grainy images of familiar faces. Jungkook's eyes focused slowly, then narrowed. "These are the others." Yoongi nodded. "The ones who didn't testify, the ones we were trying to protect, all gone. Disappeared within the last 48 hours. Gone how?" Jungkook asked. No signs of struggle, no digital traces. Their phones turned off at the same time. Their homes undisturbed. It's surgical, coordinated. Jungkook looked at the timestamp on the images. One girl, Mina, the soft-spoken one who had contacted him through an anonymous email just weeks ago, was seen entering her apartment building at 9:43 p.m. on the night of the verdict. She never came back out. "Do we have any leads?" Jungkook asked, heart starting to race. Yoongi leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Maybe, but there's something worse." He opened another file. This is a message left on Mina's encrypted forum account. It was posted 2 minutes before her signal dropped. Jungkook read it aloud. The trial was never about justice. It was a distraction. They're still here. You cut off one head, the body is still moving. Jimin and Taehyung entered then, breathless. We just heard, Jimin said. 3 more disappeared last night. Haejin too. Jungkook stood up, eyes burning. No. She had protection. Police detail. They promised. They're either compromised or killed, Yoongi said. I already tried reaching the lead officer. His number's disconnected. His home? Empty. Taehyung slammed his hand on the counter. They're cleaning house. Yoongi didn't deny it. And we're next. Jin arrived shortly after, laptop in hand, beads of sweat across his brow. Listen to me carefully. The trial put a dent in the system, yes, but it also exposed how deep that system runs. These people don't go to prison. They evaporate, and when they do, they leave scorched earth. Jungkook shook his head. We can't just wait for the fire, we have to find the others. Jin locked eyes with him. Then we go underground. 2 hours later, the team gathered in the basement of a church on the city's outskirts. It was old, damp, lit by oil lamps and a single humming fluorescent light above a rusted altar. Outside, protesters marched by, unaware of what lay beneath their feet. Yoongi rolled out a map. These are the last known locations of the missing. If the pattern holds, they're being funneled toward the coast, likely to Busan or Mokpo ports, easy to move through. Quiet. Controlled. Trafficking, Jimin whispered. Or worse, Jin said. Clean up. They wouldn't kill survivors after everything we exposed, Jungkook said, disbelief cracking in his voice. They already did, Yoongi replied. J. Haejin. How many more need to vanish before we accept that this is no longer a courtroom battle? Taehyung leaned over the map. So we follow the trail, Yoongi nodded. I've arranged transport. Unmarked. No digital signatures. But once we leave, we disappear too. No phones, no internet, no contact with the outside world. Jungkook met each of their eyes in turn. Are you sure? Jimin stepped forward. You dragged me out of hell. I'm not letting you walk back into it alone. Taehyung nodded. We finish what we started. Jin was the last. You'll need a voice when this ends. I'll be that voice. They left that night. The drive to Busan was cloaked in silence. The van, quiet except for the occasional creak of the suspension. Jungkook stared out the window, watching the highway slip past. His mind replayed everything Haejin's voice when she whispered, "Thank you," the tremble in Mina's message, the scream he never got to make as a child. Yoongi drove. Jimin sat beside Jungkook, close but not touching. They didn't need to speak. Their silence was communication. They arrived at an abandoned port just before sunrise. Cranes stood like skeletons against the pink horizon. Rusted cargo containers littered the docks, some marked with cryptic codes, others simply left to rot. Yoongi pulled out his tablet, working with a portable satellite uplink. There's movement 2 blocks east. Heat signatures, not animals, not machines, people locked in. Jungkook stood, jaw tight. Let's go! They moved fast. Down stairwells, across catwalks, behind crates. Then, in a gutted warehouse, they found them. Mina, 2 others. Alive, barely. They were shackled, drugged, dehydrated, but breathing. Jungkook dropped to his knees beside Mina, brushing the hair from her eyes. She blinked, her voice barely a whisper. They said you'd never come. Jungkook swallowed the sob rising in his throat. I'll never stop coming. Gunfire split the air. Yoongi pulled them down. 4 men in black burst through the far doors. Silenced weapons. No badges. But this time, Jungkook wasn't a child. This time, he had a team. Jimin disarmed one with a steel pipe. Taehyung knocked another out cold with a crowbar. Yoongi fired once, twice. Precision clean. By the time the last man dropped, the air reeked of sweat, fear, and blood. Jin radioed in the extraction team. Underground contacts from across the globe, Interpol allies, ex-journalists, whistleblowers, stepped in. The survivors were carried out. Mina held Jungkook's hand until the very last moment. I thought it was over, she said again. Jungkook looked her in the eyes. It is. For you, but not for them. A week later, the final story dropped. It wasn't a headline. It was a documentary. Produced by Yoongi. Narrated by Jin. Starring the survivors. Unfiltered. Uncensored. Jungkook's voice was the first you heard. I didn't survive to be silent. The footage showed it all. The black tape. The map. The trial. The disappearances. And then, the rescue. When it aired, the world stopped. Countries erupted in outrage. Laws changed. Officials resigned. A network of predators fell apart piece by piece. But Jungkook didn't celebrate. He stood on a stage a month later, in front of thousands of people. He didn't sing. He just said one thing: we fight for the ones who vanished. And the crowd said it back to him, over and over, until their voices became thunder. Until even the ones who'd vanished could hear them. The wind along the harbor was bitter and sharp. It smelled like rust, oil, and seaweed, a scent Jungkook had come to associate with both death and rebirth. The pier was empty at first glance, but he knew better. He'd been summoned here by a name he hadn't heard in almost a year. A name he'd buried like a wound that refused to heal. He stood at the edge of the dock, hands shoved into the pockets of his coat, the early morning fog clinging to his skin like sweat. Behind him, the team waited in silence, Jin with a recording device hidden under his sleeve. Yoongi perched in the back of a black SUV with signal jammers running. Jimin and Taehyung flanked either side of the lot, disguised as dock workers. Jungkook didn't look at any of them. He looked forward, and then he saw him. His brother. Alive. Not handcuffed, not imprisoned, not dragged in chains, but walking freely, calmly, like he belonged here. For a second, Jungkook couldn't breathe. He hadn't seen that face in months. Not since the trial. Not since the day the court sentenced Lee Do-yoon to life and left his brother's case pending under sealed documents. He was supposed to be gone. But of course he wasn't. Not really. They never really left, not these people. They just changed clothes, names, affiliations, ghosts in suits, reshaping the world while the rest of them tried to survive in the wreckage. His brother stopped 10 feet away. He looked thinner, paler. But his smile, that cold, patient curve, was still the same. You came, he said. Jungkook didn't reply. I wasn't sure you would, the man continued. But deep down, I always knew you'd want to know the truth. Jungkook's jaw clenched. I know the truth. No, his brother said softly. You know a truth. The one you could survive, but not the whole thing. Jungkook stepped closer, rage simmering in his spine. Don't play your games with me. Don't try to manipulate me into... I'm not manipulating you, his brother interrupted. I'm warning you. That stopped him. Warning me? There's a level beyond this, his brother said. A level even Lee Do-yoon didn't touch. You think he was the architect? He was a custodian, a middleman. I don't care, Jungkook snapped. I'm done chasing shadows. His brother tilted his head. No, you're not. You've never been. You think what you uncovered was the peak of the rot, but it wasn't. You only scratched the skin. Now they're angry. Not because of what you exposed, but because of what you've become. What are you talking about? Jungkook demanded. You're the symbol, his brother said. The flame, the face people believe. They can't bury you like the others. They can't disappear you. So now, they'll try to reclaim you. Jungkook narrowed his eyes. You're lying. I wish I were, his brother said. But you need to understand. Lee Do-yoon wasn't killed in prison by an inmate. He was extracted. Jungkook's breath caught. What? He's gone. Out. Relocated. They faked the death. You'll see it soon. In a month? Maybe less. Some new headline will sweep the news war, disaster, something big. And then, quietly, the men you thought were gone will start to return. No, Jungkook said, shaking his head. That's impossible. We won. There's no winning, his brother whispered. There's only cost. And you haven't paid yours yet. Jungkook stepped forward, fists clenched. Then tell me, why call me here? Why warn me at all? Because despite everything, his brother said, and for a moment his voice cracked, I still loved you. You don't love the people you destroy, Jungkook spat. No, his brother said, looking down. But I didn't know how to love any other way. Footsteps echoed behind Jungkook. Jimin, Yoongi, Taehyung, all moving in with purpose. Jin appeared with a mic. We have everything, he's confessing. His brother turned to Jungkook, suddenly calm again. You won't get far with that. They'll suppress it, Discredit it. They'll say it was a deepfake, again, or that I'm mentally unstable. Jungkook stared at him, then pulled a gun from his coat. Not to shoot, to show him. His brother didn't flinch. You think that makes you powerful? He asked. No, Jungkook said. It makes me free. He stepped back, signaled to the team. Jin walked up and snapped restraints onto the man's wrists. This time, he said, you don't vanish. They loaded him into the van. No one spoke for a long time. Jungkook stood on the pier long after they'd driven away. Alone. Jimin came back for him, eventually. You okay? Jungkook nodded. No, but I will be. They watched the sun rise over the bay. The sky burned pink and orange, like the whole world was bleeding. The following week, the media tried to spin it again. The tape with Jungkook's brother leaked. Someone inside the Justice Ministry had tried to kill it, but it was too late. Jin uploaded it to a public blockchain, tamper-proof, unstoppable. The truth was out. Again, this time, no one could look away. His brother named more names. Confirmed the prison break of Lee Do-yoon. Named a clandestine group operating internationally. The Council. Former officials. Royal bloodlines. Global CEOs. This wasn't just a Korean tragedy. This was global. And now the world knew. Jungkook gave one final interview. It wasn't flashy. Just a simple studio. One camera. The interviewer asked, after everything, what would you tell the version of you who was still scared, still silent? Jungkook took a breath, then said, you survived something you were never supposed to remember. They didn't just hurt you, they tried to rewrite you, but you made it out. And now the world knows. That's your power. That's your legacy. You exist. The interviewer asked the last question. Will this ever be over? Jungkook looked at the lens for a long time, then answered, no, but I'm still here. And across the world, millions whispered back, so are we. The room was almost entirely silent, save for the distant hum of studio lights and the soft rustling of the production crew behind the cameras. Jungkook sat alone on the stage, a wide circle of black with nothing but a single stool, a mic, and an audience made up entirely of survivors. Not just of his story, but theirs. Some came from halfway across the globe. Some had crossed the street from shelters. Some had not spoken aloud in years. Until now. It was a gathering that should never have needed to exist. But it did. And it was real. And for the first time since his own voice was stolen as a child, Jungkook had created something that could not be taken, something no one could edit, suppress, or twist. He leaned into the mic, calm, raw. My name is Jungkook. You already know the headlines, the court transcripts, the streams, the song. But today, I'm not here to repeat what I've already said. I'm here to close the door behind me. Not because I'm done, but because I'm ready to open a new one. He glanced toward the crowd. Some people were crying. Others were clinging to one another, hand in hand. I used to think healing meant erasing the pain. That one day I'd wake up and forget the screams, the names, the silence. But I don't believe that anymore. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means owning it. Looking at the scar and saying, you didn't kill me. Applause didn't erupt. Not yet. Because everyone in the room was holding their breath. Jungkook stood from the stool. My abuser walked free for most of my life. He smiled at me, held my hand, told me bedtime stories while hiding a knife behind his back. And for years, I blamed myself for loving him. That's what trauma does. It distorts you, makes you believe you asked for the pain, that you invited it, that you were complicit. His voice trembled, but did not break. They want us to carry that weight, because the truth is, it's heavier than justice. They hope the guilt is so crushing that we disappear under it. He stepped closer to the edge of the stage. I am not disappearing. He pointed to a screen above them. On it, the names of the known victims began to scroll. One by one, hundreds. Each name, a life, a world, a voice. Then, one final line. And those we lost. We carry you with us. Only then did the applause come. But it wasn't like anything he'd ever heard. It wasn't wild or explosive. It wasn't chaotic or hollow. It was unified, deliberate, like thunder that meant something. Later that night, Jungkook walked the quiet hallway of the shelter they had built together him. Jimin, Taehyung, Yoongi, Jin. A home for those who had no home. Funded not by the state, but by donations, by survivors, by people who believed in something that couldn't be bought. He passed open doors. He heard soft guitar strings, someone laughing, someone singing in another room. It sounded like light. He stopped in front of one door. Inside, a boy no older than 11 was sketching. On the page was a superhero in a hoodie, fire coming from his palms. Across his chest was a word, survivor. Jungkook didn't speak. He just smiled. Behind him, Jimin approached quietly. No need for conversation. Not tonight. Instead, Jimin reached out and took his hand. Taehyung joined them seconds later, bumping Jungkook's shoulder with his in that lazy way he always had. Yoongi came up from the opposite hall, holding a folder marked New Intake. Jin leaned against the wall, eyes a little red, arms crossed like he was watching his own little revolution unfold. Jungkook looked at all of them. This was no longer about revenge. It was no longer about pain. It was about rebirth. And something else too. Legacy. Because the world had changed. Because a boy who once thought his silence would be his tomb had instead carved his name into history with a scream too loud to bury. And because one truth, spoken with courage, had torn down the walls that generations had built around their shame. Jungkook looked out the window at the moon, high above the city, then whispered, mostly to himself, "I was supposed to break." He closed his eyes, but I didn't, and neither did they.